Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hello, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, please stay tuned to the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go?
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine. Presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. 331,000 shows watched. We had a really great first quarter due to the election. It was the second most active period we've ever had for you guys watching the show on the website, which was very pleasing, and thank you so much. We're big on community policing, whatever form it's taking these days is another story. I should say that me, myself, and I am very big on certain forms of community policing more than others. And we'll see what the police come up with this time. But I hate to say anything good about anything anybody connected with Rahm Emanuel or Emanuel himself ever did. But I am pleased with the choice of a Chicago top cop, whose whole background is from Chicago. I like that a lot. I think the force needs it for morale. And having the number 2 guy, Escalante, being also a Chicago cop, those are good things. So community policing in the 24th District, caps24.org. And excuse me. So anyway, at this time, we wanted to have a review of the election last time, but I can't always get my experts on the days we film. And for those of you who don't know, we only film about every 3 weeks. Some of you think that every single Wednesday I'm busy filming. No, we do at least 3 shows at a time, sometimes 4. And we film approximately every 3 to 4 weeks. So that's how it works. So, when somebody says, hey, I'd really like to be on your show, and I said, yeah, I'd love to have you as a guest. So are you available this, XYZ day? And they go, no, but how about the day after? Or how about 2 days later? No, once every 3 weeks, that's a chance. That's about it. So it is a pleasure to introduce you to somebody who has become known throughout the land as election lawyer extraordinaire. We're talking about Jim Nally. How you doing?
Thanks, Avi. I'm known because you pegged that name on me and it stuck, so I appreciate that very much. I occasionally, more often than you would think, people say, hey, you're on the show with Avi. You're the election lawyer extraordinaire, which is good for business, so thank you.
No, good. It's my pleasure, and I love hearing stuff like that, by the way. I really do. Anyway, I could get into things, but no, it's nice. It's really nice. And yeah, that's an appropriate title too, because you're definitely one of the top lawyers in town, and along those lines. And for those of you who are running for office, who for whatever stupid reason think you don't need an election lawyer, he'll slay you, and he has. And I've warned people who, we can't get a 50th Ward Republican candidate here because you get rid of them every time.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
But you know what? They break the rules.
We have a good election bar in Chicago. It's not a large election bar, but there are a good, dozen attorneys who practice regularly, and they're all very competent. And actually, it's...
By the way, is there anything other than Irish whiskey on the bar?
Well...
I'm sorry, I had to say that.
Threw me off there.
You're talking about we have a very small election bar in Chicago, about a dozen attorneys.
Yeah, about a dozen attorneys who do it regularly. And I will say this, it's a pleasure to be an election lawyer here because although we may fight like cats and dogs representing our clients, which we should be doing, we all get along, with maybe one or two exceptions. It's a group of people. It's a very collegial group of people, men and women, that, you know, it's kind of the old-time practice of law, which is rapidly vanishing, where somebody's word is their word, and somebody can call up and say, hey, Jim, I need an extra day to file this, and no problem. You know, you don't have to document it with a letter saying, confirming our conversation, you gave me an extra day to do this. All the things that, unfortunately, the practice of law is starting to be eaten up by. And the group of election attorneys are a big exception to that. As much as we're going to zealously represent our clients, we're not going to play games with people. We're not going to impose artificial deadlines where they aren't needed. And it is a pleasure to practice in the field. It's very busy. As you know, the nature of the practice is very compact, and we're doing, you know, things that in a normal civil case might be spread out over a year or two in a matter of days. But it's a big help to know that, by and large, the person who's on the other side is going to be a reasonable person in terms of extending a professional courtesy if you need it, making sure they tell you up front, here are my witnesses, here's what I'm going to bring in as evidence, here's the people I want to subpoena. There's very few people who play dirty pool or try to get an unfair advantage. And I tell people that the election code is out there, it's codified. The State Board of Elections does an excellent job. Every election, they publish a candidate's guide. Every office in the state of Illinois that is up for election for that cycle, they give you every single qualification that you need. It tells you if there's a residency requirement, how long it is, if there's an age requirement, how many years you have to be living in a district, or how old you might have to be. And they even give you a link to a sample petition that you can use to prepare a petition, so you're using the proper petition for that office. So when people are sloppy, and when people who want to take on a public trust of being an elected official don't demonstrate enough interest in doing it right, knowing that there are resources out there readily available to people to make sure they can do it right. I've never knocked anybody off the ballot who followed the rules correctly. The people that are knocked off the ballot who are people who either think they're smarter than everybody else and they don't need to read the rules or follow them, or people who are too lazy. And are these really the people you want in office? I say, if somebody is running for office and they can't sit down and read 10 simple rules and understand what they need to do in terms of putting their petitions together, are they really going to be a good public servant? Is this somebody you want handling hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in public funds? So, you know, the idea of people running for office presupposes there's kind of a litmus test. You know, make sure you understand the rules, make sure you follow the rules. And the people who do, you know, every election cycle, I will say this, every election cycle, 85% of the people who file don't draw an objection, because you'll look at their petitions, you'll look at their other documents that they need to file, and they will be done correctly. On a statewide basis, you know, every election you probably have anywhere from 500 to 1,000 candidates for various offices. And the number of objections, they're primarily in the Chicago area, but the number of objections statewide constitute 10% or less of the total number of candidacies that have been filed. So it's not that hard to do. Now, I've also told people, and you know, I had a reporter many years ago who was criticizing a situation where a candidate, I was representing an objector, and a candidate was removed from office. And, you know, wasn't this unfair? As an American, shouldn't they just be allowed to run for office? And I said, no, there are rules. And if it's important enough to you to follow the rules, hire an attorney who knows what they're doing. It's much easier, much simpler, much cheaper to hire an election attorney at the beginning, where they'll prepare the petitions for you and they'll make sure that all the documents are prepared correctly. Every single one of my clients comes down to my office and sits at my conference table, and we bind those petitions and other nomination papers. And they walk out of my office with a packet that is ready to be filed, because it's important to do it the right way. And, you know, if I'm in, you know, I may be in there Saturday or Sunday, and it may be 8 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night. But the point is that if I'm going to put my name on that campaigns, we're going to do it the right way. And it's not that hard to do. You know, and I mentioned this report. I said, you know, did you ever buy a house? Oh, yeah, I bought a house. It's a big investment, isn't it? Oh, yeah. You hired an attorney, didn't you, to represent you at the closing? Yeah. Yeah, I said, you're a smart guy. You probably could have figured out all the paperwork, but you hired an attorney. Why? Because it was important enough to you that you didn't want a mistake to be made. And it's the same type of thing here. If it's important enough to you to seek public office and seek to be representing your fellow citizens, spend a little bit of extra money and make sure that you have somebody there who's going to ensure that you do it the right way. And if you do, when I see, somebody comes in and says, hey, we'd like to look at this candidate's petition to challenge him, and I see a name like Mike Casper or Tom Giaconetti or Bert Olson, on those papers, I'm going to take a look at them, but I'm going to know technically these are going to be done correctly. These are attorneys who know their stuff, and they're not going to let a mistake be made on their watch. And so, now, signatures are another thing. You still have to get enough valid signatures. And, that's not a legal issue. That's just a practical issue. You get out, you get enough circulators, you get enough reputable people as circulators who aren't just going to stand at the bus stop and get anybody who walks by to sign it. That's a different issue. But I'm talking about the proper petition form, the papers presented in the proper order, everything notarized correctly, the proper forms filed, with the statement of economic interest. These are all legal things that a good election attorney is going to make sure you do right. And those are the things that a good election attorney is going to make sure their candidate is never going to be tossed off the ballot for. Now, again, signatures can be a different issue because that's up to the candidate's campaign apparatus to take care of that.
I did hear one unfortunate story this year. A guy who actually had been on the show who, for whatever reason, just didn't get something notarized or signed. And everything else was 100% in order. He insisted that, he'd take care of the final step himself. And, it's sort of like, no, you listen to your lawyer. The guy, in one case in the 50th Ward, when I heard what this guy submitted, and, he's a well-intentioned, well-meaning guy, no question about it. I knew immediately that he was gone. He wasn't going to be on the ballot. That's just not going to happen. It doesn't take much. You got to do things by the book, and it pays. It pays to having a lawyer is, you don't skimp on that when it comes to elections. By the way, when you talk about this small fraternity of election lawyers, you'd be surprised how many have come up to me and introduced themselves as somebody, as a friends of yours. They all, everybody seems to like everybody when you talk about those one or two exceptions. I won't say it on the air, but I'm willing to bet who one of those exceptions are.
Well, I'm not going to get into that because
I know.
The vast majority.
By the
of
way, it's not that you don't like him. It's like the guy plays the game by the rules of a different drummer.
Look, exactly. The one or two exceptions are people who don't act professionally like that, don't extend those courtesies that we routinely do as lawyers to other lawyers, and that's why they're not viewed in high regard by their colleagues. It's that simple.
Yeah, now, unfortunately, this year we didn't get to do our usual pre-election show because the studios at CanTV are still being built, and, we wish them luck. We
did a nice pre-recorded version.
We did a nice pre-recorded version. We didn't do, no, I agree. No, that was good, and it got a lot of watches. But also we didn't, this is our post-mortem a little later than usual. The one race, now, you did a really good job of not wanting to be partisan in the pre-election show. Of course, I got partisan right at the end. I couldn't help but not be. Listen, I got Jewish Chicago out there. There's two people at least I had to mention. I could have mentioned more. But, let's take a look at some of the elections. I'm not surprised. Now, my favorite candidate on the ballot was Anita Alvarez, okay? And I'm drinking a coffee mug in support with her. I had a pretty good feeling she was going to lose. When I saw Chicago tonight, about 9 days before the election, and I saw that the general reporter off the street, who wasn't really informed, thought that Kim Fox, Preckwinkle's person, was qualified, despite not having, but despite the fact that she lied about, she violated election law, number one, by not declaring a $25,000 gift. She lied about having run all these felony trials. But you know what? They took for granted that being Preckwinkle's executive director was experienced enough to qualify her to be an administrator. And that's a reach that I don't think would have been granted to too many other candidates. You know, Preckwinkle seems to really be becoming a little more powerful than I'm comfortable with in many ways. But the margin really, really got to me. And, you know, the election map basically showed that on the fringes and in the suburbs, Alvarez did well. In the city and even in Latin neighborhoods, Fox really kicked Anita's butt, so to speak.
Well, you know what? This was a presidential year with no incumbent president being on the ballot. And turnout was enormous, absolutely enormous. Even up to a week before the election, I was talking to some of the committeemen that I represent, and nobody was telling me they were expecting this groundswell. They said, it's a presidential year. Presidential years are always higher, but not to the extent that people turned out this time. When you got over 1 million people voting in the primary in Cook County, that's enormous.
I think 1.3 million, something like that.
Yeah, I mean that is an enormous number of people, and you know, when those elections take place, it's usually a result of some kind of a movement, and where people just feel. You know, I don't think there's any question. There's a lot of anger right now on a national level, and some of that's seeping down to the local level as well. And you know, certainly the local electorate was energized by that, and we've had these police videos and everything that everybody has seen on television hundreds of times now, and you know, things like that. I don't think there was one single element that you would say this is what really drove turnout to this large number, but there were 4 or 5 things, and you put them together, and you just had just a massive turnout of voters, a massive turnout.
Yeah. By the way, one thing I do want to point out about the little Con McDonald case and Anita Alvarez, after over 500 days, the FBI still has said we need more time to make our findings. So some stuff just wasn't fair, guys. Sorry, but anyway. Getting back to one of the questions I have now, the Republican turnout also, the Republican vote in presidential years is abnormally high, often because there isn't a race that interests the Democrats of late. But, you know, I was thinking that a number of people that might have voted for an Anita Alvarez or someone else like her didn't get to vote for the Democrats at all in that case, because by deciding you're going to vote for a Republican president, you've eliminated yourself from the other county slot, from the other Democrat, from voting for anybody who's Democratic.
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. The Republic, although the Clinton-Sanders race was a race here, it wasn't like the Republican race, which at the time had multiple candidates who were still viable, or at least thought they were viable. And then you have the whole Trump thing, which is just sui generis. I mean, there's, you know,
Wait, did you say sewage generic?
I used the Latin term, but you may have translated it correctly.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing like Trump. You know, I mean, you know, you look at the Democratic primary. You know, you got Bernie Sanders, who's a U.S. senator and has been an office holder for a number of years, and you got Hillary Clinton, who obviously has held office and been first lady and enmeshed in politics for most of her life. So there was still something traditional about the Democratic race in that you had people who were experienced politicians running against one another. The Trump thing is just out of left field. You've got somebody who is not a politician, and in fact, you know, one of his major boasts is, I'm not a politician. I'm not like all these other guys. I don't have their experience. And you know what? That's why I'm going to be good, because I'm not weighted down with all these political liabilities that these other people have. You know, we kind of saw that in the governor's race in 2014 here in Illinois. Bruce Rauner came in as an outsider. I'm a businessman. I'm a problem solver. I'm not a politician. I don't need special interest money. I can generate enough money of my own that I don't have to be beholden to anybody. That was kind of a preview, actually, of what's happening. And it seems to be happening more in the Republican Party. I'm not sure why that is, as opposed to, kind of an outsider trying to take over the Democratic Party.
One guess I might hazard is that the Republican Party, well, first of all, a lot of the people who are for Trump, and I think Trump is really the key to this whole thing, are people that there are people in their 50s and 60s who've never voted.
Right.
Who are attracted to this guy. And some of these people are actually Democrats. And you know what? It's just, they have been so frustrated and angry for so long. At least, because I've talked to people who otherwise I would consider intelligent who were going to vote for this guy or did vote for this guy.
Well, Sanders has kind of captured that on the left. And you've got a lot
You're exactly right. It's anger.
People frustrated with the system, frustrated with the process, and they're saying, even though this guy did come out of the political process, I like what he's saying. I like that he's railing against the process.
I like what he's saying too, but I also know the reality of being a socialist is not a good thing. But because I insist on voting in the county races and judicial races, I took a Democratic ballot, even though I will surely vote for a Republican candidate. Well, except for maybe one of them. But I don't think he's going to win now. I really don't. It's funny. I really don't think that's going to happen anymore. But I voted for Bernie Sanders. And, I mean, God forbid I actually should vote for somebody that won an election for president. I would hate to take the blame for that. But socialism doesn't work. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party doesn't understand itself that it's crossed lines it's never crossed before.
I think I think the people who are supporting Bernie Sanders, by and large, they're not looking at the label of socialist. They're listening to particular issues that he's speaking to.
I've watched, except I missed one debate. I've seen every single minute of every single debate. Even if I had to watch it at 12:30 at night on YouTube, after the debate or whatever. And the first hour of a debate, I'm cheering for this guy like there's no tomorrow. I'm not a fan of Hillary. I'm not a fan of the establishment. It's like people that can't see who owns her, who's bought her. There's a lot of problems I have with Hillary that you can read about in Jewish Chicago. Go to aviworld.com. You can read about it there. But, when he actually talks about policy, when he starts talking about foreign policy or what he's going to do, I love the idea of free junior college. I only had to pay $20 a semester when I went to Mayfair Junior College. It was wonderful, but it's a different day and age. And that's one of the reasons we have all the problems we have now, is because they were undercharging then.
But what it demonstrates, though, is Bernie Sanders has tapped into that discontent with the system, just like Donald Trump has.
Oh, very much. And you know what? That is a predominating factor. And people, you would think in a process that lasts months, people would know better after a certain point in time. In Trump's case, maybe a little bit, because he's so outlandish and such a roguish character. And I mean, from the minute I really started having to take the guy seriously, I started thinking just not even the good wrestling, WWE wrestling. This guy's just, and by the way, of course, he happened to have been in a big he was in their big night.
Yes, several years ago, yes.
Yeah.
He made an appearance there. He didn't wrestle, but he was the ring man or something, I think.
Yeah.
Well, that the bottom line is presidential years bring out more people to begin with, and this particular presidential year brought out a lot more people than you normally have.
And by the way, I'm glad to see it. I just wish people were a little more reasoned.
Right. It's if you're going to come out, take the time to study and however, you know what? Everybody's granted that right as an American to vote, and there's no literacy test or poll tax or anything else where you have to pass a test that you're qualified to vote. You're a citizen of this country, and everybody in this country, that's one of your basic rights of citizenship. You can come in and vote whether you've done your homework or haven't done your homework.
One thing I just want to say real quick and then go to one other subject I want to talk about before we run out of time is that I was really disappointed that I got less complaints than ever about Jewish Chicago. I did go through a lot of pains to make sure I had everything right and had outlined my case. But not to the point where you guys didn't rip me apart. I just don't feel like I'm being loved anymore. I mean, it's not like I didn't get comments, but, you know, come on, all these nice things.
No death threats this time, huh?
I've never had a death threat. I've had some wonderfully nutty phone calls. I mean, you know, the bowels of the mental health system have come out and called me about Jewish Chicago. It's been interesting. You know, we were talking off the air with Jack Lahan. What kind of changes is the past election going to make in future elections? And I'm referring specifically to things like judicial you were talking about.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to listen to Jack's segment that he filmed with you, and he is the man on judicial stuff. Thank God he's out there, because this is the only place where you can get good, reliable information about judicial candidates and the judicial system too. And you know, it's sorely overlooked by the mainstream press, and I don't know why, because as we've talked about so many times, Avi, the elected official, most people are more likely to interact with than any other is a judge. At some point, you're going to have a traffic ticket, or you're going to have a probate matter, or you're going to be getting divorced, or you're going to be suing somebody for an injury. These are all times when an elected official that you're going to be dealing with is a judge, and people just don't pay. They don't pay attention, and it's very contrary to their own interests, because by and large, these are the people you should know the most about, because these are the people that you're more than likely going to cross their path. One quick thing that will happen is, because of this massive turnout, the signature requirements for people running for judge countywide are going to be a lot higher. This cycle, because it's based on the percentage of the voter turnout in the last election. So this cycle was based on the 2014 election turnout, which was not particularly high. And for instance, running for a Cook County Circuit Judge, this cycle, you needed, I believe it was 2,355 signatures. With the turnout here, you're going to need about 5,000 signatures.
Wow.
To run countywide.
Is that going to affect like aldermen, state reps, things like that also, or?
No, state reps are a set number.
Yeah.
Just like judges and subcircuits are a set number. It's 1,000 signatures. So that's not based on voter turnout in the prior election. But it will affect other offices as well. Like the next cycle, people running for countywide office will be based on that. But the judges are the people who are going to really feel it, because that's an enormous number of signatures to get. When I'm advising my clients when they're running, my advice is you shoot for getting 3 times the minimum. Because if you are challenged, or somebody just goes through your petitions to check on them, you want to have enough of a cushion to know that you're not going to fall below that minimum. So if you think about that, somebody running for judge countywide next time is going to have to come up with somewhere in the neighborhood of 15,000 signatures to be pretty much bulletproof on the signature issue. That's a lot of signatures.
Oh, yeah.
That is a lot of signatures. So it will have an impact on the next election, definitely.
No question about it. Well, at this point in time, last 30 seconds, go ahead.
One quick plug here. Avi was nice enough to designate me as the Jewish Chicago representative to go and take in the Mark Salem show last month. And Mark Salem is a mentalist, fantastic show. Look him up online or on YouTube. The things that this guy can do are absolutely mind-boggling. Mind-boggling, that's all I'll say.
I've seen him also. I highly agree. And I want to thank Noreen Heron and her agency for, providing with the tickets. And I was glad you were able to take advantage.
I should have asked him what voter turnout was going to be in the primary, because nobody saw that coming, but he probably did.
I have seen his show, and Mike Wallace actually had him on 60 Minutes, and Mike Wallace tried to get him. I mean, get him. He didn't succeed. We're out of time. Jim Nally, election lawyer extraordinaire. You want to give any contact information real quick? 312-422-5560. I'd be happy to talk to you about any election information you might need. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Sonny. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.